Okay, we are good to go. I will bring it closer because it has a green light, so I was just too far away from it. Thank you. Okay, welcome to our work session for April 2nd, 2024, Election Day. We will jump right in. Is there anything anyone wants to review on the regular agenda? All right, I'm going to take that as a no, so we will start right in with issues and updates. And I'm going to start over here, Emerson, with you, since we're working on technology on the other side of the room.
Actually, no update from me.
All right. Pam?
Sustainability and BDC met both last week and they're both working on their priorities for budgeting. And I'm going to turn my microphone on and say, do I need to say it again?
Yes, please.
Sustainability and the BDC both met last week and they both were talking about their priorities for budget for this next upcoming budget. And then last night I attended the Green Space Commission and they were again prioritizing their initiatives for this next budget season. Many of those things are not a cost, but they still want to identify their priorities. And then they have some upcoming events. April 17th, which is after the next council meeting, is Arbor Day. Tree City Luncheon is coming up and we are going to be recognized for the Missouri Department of Conservation Growth Award for the Green Our City project, and we receive a matching grant for that. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. David?
Nothing for me, Madam Mayor.
Karen? Right, so thank you.
I was not able to attend Green Space, so thank you, Pam, for going in my stead. I really appreciate that. And other than that, just did some education canvassing, and I think that's all I have to report.
Okay. Katie?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Anything from our city attorney?
Nothing.
All right, and city manager.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Just a couple of things. Planning director and I had our first meeting with the Lakota group who we awarded the comprehensive plan contract to. And it was really just an introductory meeting. And so we've got some plans in motion, checking calendars. There will be more information coming pretty quickly in the next couple weeks regarding how we move forward with steering committee, which may be renamed. We'll have some more conversations on that, as well as some dates for community engagement. And then my only other thing is today is a really big day. It's election day. Obviously, we don't have results yet, which I think is the perfect opportunity to thank the community ahead of the results. Win or lose, really appreciate all the engagement that the community has had, appreciate council's engagement in terms of getting education out there and all the hard work that staff has put into it. So I'm incredibly grateful and for both Prop W as well as the various charter amendments. And for that, our charter review board, particularly the chair, Jeannie Kirkton, did an amazing job working to help get the education out.
Great, thank you very much. I just have a couple of things. The Arts Commission met this morning. We'll have replacement banners for the City of the Arts banners soon. You may have noticed that they're aging. And those will, I think, are gonna look really nice, and area businesses have the opportunity to sponsor those. So it'll be a new endeavor and I think a good one. I do want to echo Dr. Peoples and start with staff. We have a back row of staff who I know have worked very hard on various things with Prop W and other activities of the city. So thank you for that. And echo the Charter Review Advisory Board and the Parks Commission Board that worked hard on that, on those things, on their ballot initiatives as well. But I also want to say thanks to my colleagues. We had the informational event on Saturday and everyone came. Everyone did some informational canvassing. So thanks for putting in those hours and that time. I appreciate it. All right, our first topic for today and our only topic for today is a sidewalk policy. And if our acting director of public works would like to come forward.
Good evening.
I just want to say before we start, thank you for creating something that I thought existed years ago. So
You're welcome. So you should have gotten a copy of the sidewalk policy in your council packet last week. And I have a presentation. Here.
So as Ms. Cavato gets settled, I'll just share. So she did create something that did not exist and out of nothing. So what we're really looking for tonight is feedback. She did a terrific job on working on this policy and creating, again, something where it didn't exist, but we're aware that it perhaps needs some tweaks, and it's especially as we start the funding discussion. So we really welcome your feedback, and then I imagine, unless everybody says it's good to go, at some point in time, we will bring it back with the revisions made and ask for direction at that point in time.
I'm sorry,
please proceed.
am I running this, Katie? I've not done this before. Okay. Oh. Bear with me, please. How do I get back to the beginning?
There you go.
Okay, here we go. So this is me, Vera Cavato, Acting Director of Public Works. I've met some of you. I've not officially met all of you, so it's nice to be here. So the sidewalk policy, the purpose of this is to make a policy, official policy for our residents who want to request a sidewalk. There's a lot to go into this, the criteria for the sidewalk itself, the review process, which takes into account, you know, trees, utility relocations and things of that nature, connectivity, prioritization of the sidewalk, some implementation and maintenance that the homeowners, residents need to be aware of, which is the sidewalk, once we build it, it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain it. And then as Dr. Peoples mentioned, the funding. We will have to sort of determine the funding if we can go after grants like Safe School grant, which we use for central sidewalk, or if it's a shared cost with the resident, something will have to be finalized with that. So this is just sort of a slide showing the central sidewalk that was done. It was applied for in 2015. The city received Safe Routes to School funding, and support letters were obtained from the schools in the nearby areas that you see the stars there. And that's just sort of gets into sort of the more of the details of the policy. I have some more slides. Should I continue, or do you have, yes? Okay. So really sort of the review process is, you know, history of vehicular pedestrian crashes, sort of the current use, evidence of a shared, you know, of a worn path, public parks, schools, connectivity, filling in gaps between existing sidewalk. Last summer, we put a sidewalk on South Rock Hill between Central to fill that area and to allow schools to walk to Annunciation safely. And then priority, you know, we'll have to, once they submit the application, the residents, the petition will have to take a look and prioritize those requests.
So before you go on, in
Yes,
terms
ma'am.
of the previous slide, was that, what do we call it, application review process? I assume that when a resident requests this, that we will ask them to provide as much of this information as possible. Or are we going to rely on Public Works to really, they're going to say, I want it on this street, and then our staff is going to go out and try and collect that data?
Our staff, my recommendation is our staff, Public Works, would go out and collect some of this data. I don't know if, you know, costs associated and some of the items in this review list may be fully understood.
And I didn't mean the whole list. I meant whatever, you know, school proximity. Actually, now that I am reading these more closely, I find that I asked an irrelevant question on only like 2 or 3 things could they really provide. So please go ahead and
That's-
forget that I interrupted you.
It's really sort of a review process to see if it's feasible and where it would fall into our list of priorities for sidewalks. So then just a little bit of information on the priority: connectivity, greenways, schools, activity centers, any locations that require ADA. Sidewalk list, it's recommended, or the intent to create a list that has been prioritized and sort of evaluated on a yearly basis. And, back to budget and funding, when available, seek outside grants, outside funding sources of that nature to support this sidewalk policy. Oops, And then, of course, maintenance. I really want to point out that once we do the sidewalk, the homeowner, the resident is required to maintain the sidewalk. Do you have any questions?
So if there is, repair that's needed on the existing sidewalk, that is the responsibility of the homeowner,
That's correct.
with the homeowner contract with city to incur that cost.
I'm not aware in my duration with the city that that's happened.
Where to get the outside contractor to do that work.
Typically, yes.
Is that how it is for existing sidewalks now, or is that would be new with the policy?
That is an existing ordinance.
So,
I'm sorry.
oh, I was just wondering, like, sometimes tree roots bump it up, and I thought that we took care of that sort of thing.
That is correct. My apologies. If it's a city tree that damages a city sidewalk, we will remove the tree, grind the stump, remove and replace the sidewalk to make it safe.
So that's kind of the one exception.
That's the one exception. Otherwise, dangerous sidewalks fall to the resident to repair.
Some areas in Webster, especially not where I live,
I'm sorry.
in the area where I live, North Webster.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
This house might have a sidewalk. Two houses, next two houses don't have a sidewalk. And then there might be another sidewalk. There might be a different width in front of the home. And in some cases, there's no sidewalk at all for 5 or 6 homes. Is there any ability to try to connect those sidewalks together?
Yeah, I think there's possibility on two fronts, if I may. One of them would be the resident petition, which does require 90% of the residents on the street to be in agreement, since they'll be required to maintain it, with the exception of a city tree. The second one is the walkability study we're going to do with the SS 4A FY23 grant. We're going to hire a consultant to do a walkability study, but that's the intent, is to close some of those gaps and create a, safer passage for pedestrians.
So related to that then, the walkability study is part of this demonstration grant. So really what it is designed to do then is give us a list of places for an implementation grant. So we know now we have all these little gaps, or we have these places that are routes to school. Now will you come give us another set of money? Is that, the idea? I know we'll probably have to spend some of our own money too. But I assume that there is a process by which we will go for an implementation grant as well at some point.
Yeah, I think once we get the walkability study, shows us where the sidewalk gaps are missing for close, prioritization schools and things of that nature. We would take that list and take that and apply for the implementation grant, which is the next step on this SS4A.
If I remember correctly. So the entire neighborhood must be part of that application process, 90%?
90%,
of that?
yes.
90% of the properties or
Owners.
90% of the whole street?
90%, I'm going to call it the street, but it's really 90% of the area of influence, if you will. So if it's, a block that wants the sidewalk and 90% of those people would like it, they can petition to submit.
I'm just wondering, like, in the case of, like Emerson said, and we have some near us too, where there's, mostly sidewalk and then a 2-house gap or something like that. Is it 90% of those 2 houses, which would be, you need both of them, or is it a broader, for like a gap situation like that, is it a broader area?
So I think some of this is what we're asking for that direction on, because these are good questions, and there's other factors other than just how many houses are there. What is the walkability? Is it close to school? All those things on the list, and how do we weight that?
Yeah.
And I'll throw another little monkey wrench in. So there was some history of, there wasn't a sidewalk policy that we could find, but as we're going through budget things to work on the budget that we'll get to share with you pretty soon, we did find an old sidewalk fund.
The money in it?
Yeah, Eric, you don't want us to get our hopes up. right?
I was like, well,
You with a one-track mind, where's the money? So it goes back, the documentation that we could find, and just frankly, there wasn't a lot of documentation. We're trying to dig and find it, but to the nineties. And apparently residents could apply through the city for funds, essentially. We put liens on their homes for the sidewalks. They were repaying the city, and then we had liens. Not suggesting we move forward in that, but that may be a program that you recall. Couldn't find documentation, don't know which homes, don't know which neighborhoods, don't know how any of that information. But there is history of us having a fund. Yeah. Oh, did you find some information, Katie? Oh, share, please.
I'm sure there are no funds. And, people paid them off. I think they were like 5-year loans with some interest on it. And I think any that were outstanding were written off. And, I think I'd have to double check. I really didn't know we were going to go here tonight, but I think, it might have went before the voters, to approve this. I have to double check.
If you could find some history there, that would be terrific. Certainly didn't think it was a ballot issue, but that's.
So does that then mean it's would be sort of like the sewer lateral program? I mean, in that you pay in, or I guess it would depend on, sorry, let's stick with the policy. Now we're getting to the sort of funding mechanisms, and I know we haven't finished the discussion. of the
You know, I
policy.
honestly think the funding mechanism is the easier part. It's the ongoing maintenance discussions, I think, that get a little trickier. Because I think there's many ways, whether we do it through kind of granting or whatever programs, there's ways for it to be funded. It's who owns that sidewalk afterwards, I think is the real dicey piece.
So who does own the sidewalk after we build?
I'm gonna go back to.
So
Not
but
us- you
from a
say
legal
not
standpoint,
us?
if I trip on a sidewalk in Webster Groves, who do I sue?
we would probably sue.
Okay.
One night.
That's what I would assume. But we're putting the maintenance on the homeowner, so we're putting potential liability. We're putting our liability in the hands of a third party.
So it depends. There are private sidewalks.
Yeah.
Private sidewalks do exist, right? But most sidewalks, even if they're privately built at some point, are dedicated to the city and maintained by the city, right? So I mean, one of the things we need to be sure of then when we're if there's a maintenance agreement or something, is that it's being maintained to limit liability.
Who's checking that maintenance?
Just want to add in briefly to the risk management side, which comes to finance. So won't contradict the attorney, but all of our sidewalks, when there is, because we've just had some trip and falls and such go on, the first claim is made to the owner. All maintenance, the only maintenance the city does on sidewalks of a regular kind, other than the repair that you talked about with the routes, is done in our business districts as a contracted service out of that fund, really for cleanup and such. So we do, I won't say issue orders, but our risk management turns first the insurance company to the owner of the property as an improvement upon the property in the right of way that we have constructed, but it is that they are considered the first claimant by our insurance.
Is it part of our checklist when we transfer a property in Webster Groves and issue an occupancy permit?
That I will turn to Miss Perry, because I do not know that answer. What I do know is from a finance perspective and risk management perspective, the first claim must be made. While it may be ultimately the city's responsibility for some larger piece of the maintenance, the first claim is against the property owner in terms of risk management.
So I really like this policy. I think it's an interesting policy. The maintenance thing is really interesting to me, but so let me ask you this.
Wait, David, do you mind before you
Oh,
ask
yeah,
your second
sorry.
question? Mara, can you answer the question that we left hanging there in terms of review? I wanted to know the answer.
Can you repeat the question?
So if I sell my house and I have a sidewalk in front of it, and that sidewalk was either pre-existing or built during my home ownership, and when I transfer that property and they do come over and do their check, are they checking the sidewalk to make sure?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah, we do check, we check the sidewalk, we check the driveway, for tripping hazards. If there's a major tripping hazard, we note it on the occupancy inspection that it's something that they need to take care of before the new occupancy.
But then do we have follow-up to determine if they do?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, because you can't get your occupancy permit until that inspection checklist has been
perfect.
addressed.
So that's good. So that's great to know that there's at least some procedure in place for us to maintain these sidewalks, or at least put the onus on the homeowner.
Thank you. All right, you had a
Oh, yeah,
follow-up.
so
Yes, sir.
the maintenance thing is really interesting to me, but this council's talked a lot about green initiatives and sustainability. And I know that the criteria had some sustainability practices in it. But it seems to me, I guess I'm a little confused, and I don't have kids, so I will be the first to admit that I'm not worried about my kid going out on the street. But I did grow up in Webster Groves, and I would walk to school, and I didn't walk on a sidewalk. I walked on a street. Is there a concern that we don't have enough sidewalks in Webster Groves? What- what- I guess that's confusing to me, because most of our streets are 25 miles an hour. They're not that heavily driven, and those that are heavily driven, we already have sidewalks. So what, is this more of a perception for the residents that it creates safety, or does it actually create safety?
People didn't drive down the street when you were growing up like they do today. Crazy, totally ignoring, speed limits.
Yeah.
Stop signs.
And I like that anecdotal evidence, I do, but where's the hard data?
Well, yours is anecdotal too, right?
It is, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying, I don't recall a lot of kids getting hit when I was younger.
I mean, I can name a few, so if you want.
Years ago, David.
Can we go one at a time,
But
please?
all I'm trying to ask from a big picture standpoint, are we as a council saying we need more sidewalks in the city of Webster Groves?
So
Because that's what it seems like we might be doing with this policy, and we're giving the impression to the citizen. That's all I'm trying to understand.
my answer to that is, we do get requests, and in the absence of a policy, we're not checking the data to find out so if you look at the criteria, some of the reasoning that you're talking about is in there. How much traffic is on this thing? How many pedestrians are there? What's the history of crashes and things like that on there? So I think in a sense, the policy itself does the research that you want us to think about before we consider putting in a sidewalk.
Sure.
Why would we spend money on something that has, no traffic? So let's say for the sake of argument, somebody moves on a street where there's, 10 cars a day and that's it.
Mhm.
I mean, they may feel like they need one, but we can then give them the data that says, no, you really don't.
I agree. That's
And,
fair.
and I'll be honest, the people who want sidewalks, they tend to come back over and over
Yeah.
and over again. And so I think it's to their benefit as well if we have a policy so that we can say yes or no.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not opposed to the policy. I'm just trying to understand. I think this is, to me, by us talking about this, we're giving at least I would feel like this is giving the impression that we're thinking about adding more sidewalks throughout Webster Groves.
Has it come up in traffic commission?
No
advisory
sidewalks have come up in the traffic and the TAC. But to be fair, right, it's only been about a year, and they've been dealing with parking and everything like that,
Mhm.
which you can say is potentially a walking hazard or a walking issue,
Mhm.
so.
And I will say part of the reason I think this has become a point of discussion is the change in Hickson has meant we have more kids walking to school in South Webster than we used to in the past. And some of them, because it's middle school, are coming from much greater distances. The construction with Memorial Field has changed some of the traffic patterns around there. Some of those changes are temporary, some of them may be permanent, so that influences routes to school. So I think there is a reason that some people are coming to us now about this that has to do with changes in patterns of behavior here.
And the change in Gibbons is now a elementary school
A neighborhood school.
and neighborhood school, and then kids walk to school. And that was the purpose of putting Gibbons there, so they have a school they can walk to. Some of the
But it aren't.
streets, some of the streets in North Webster have maybe sidewalks on one side, and on the other side, they have sidewalks, like I mentioned. Every other house might have a
I can.
sidewalk, and then, just wait. And then, so because the scenario for Gibbons changed the area, there was a need to make sure there was a safe walking path for students to get to Gibbons. And not necessarily just from the north area coming from going to west, coming from south to north. north to south. All that needs to make sure that are safe walking streets.
Yeah, and not just with, Givens is the biggest change, right?
Mhm.
But the boundaries changed overall. And so the traffic patterns changed when that happened. And that's been 3 years, I would say. So that might be another thing.
And I'll tell you, when I was on the committee to redraw the school lines, what students went to what school. And it was parents that, well, if my child goes here, they have to walk in the street to get to their school, and I don't want that. And I came back and said, my child walked in the streets to get to that school for many years.
Mhm.
I will say this, though, I do take your point, David, because it does seem that when we make a policy, people then assume that we want to do a whole bunch of things in this area. And to me, then maybe it's clear, we need to be very clear in the policy that just because you apply doesn't mean you're going to meet the criteria for us to go spend the time looking for funds or us to dedicate the funds, that we have a clear list of, things that we'll consider. And no is a full sentence, right? We can say that if we need to. But I hadn't thought about it the way you're talking about it, and it does make sense to me. I still think we need it, but that is a signal that we don't want to send.
But I just think from a cohesive standpoint, we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about green, and the complete streets picture seems to be a better avenue than, and granted, this should be part of that complete streets picture, but that seems like it'd be a better discussion that we should be having with the community than saying, oh, do you want a sidewalk on this street that gets 15 vehicles a year and we're wasting staff time to determine whether we should put a sidewalk in. I feel like our city staff is intelligent enough and capable enough to realize where we need sidewalks in the most dangerous parts. And I agree that there are places that it's going to make you feel a little bit safer to have a sidewalk, but that doesn't necessarily mean we should be spending staff time and resources on determining whether we should put a sidewalk in.
So we're trying to convince people to get to the high school in not just a single person in a car, right? Because we have a parking problem at the high school. You can't walk from South Edgar to the high school on a sidewalk the entire way. There's chunks of Edgar that are not sidewalked.
Mhm.
So they're not great spots. They're dangerous. Those are the primary ones I'm thinking of when I'm thinking like, there's gotta be, we need some action on that. And
Where's Edgar not sidewalk?
right before you get to the bridge, if you're coming from south up to north, like right before you get to the overpass over 44.
You cross the street right there.
Yes, but there's no sidewalk on both sides it's a small section, but there's no crosswalk, there's no sidewalk, there's nothing in that small area because it's not a great spot for a sidewalk. And so but if you have a kid who walks to school.
I get it. I do. I understand what you're saying.
I'm thinking about it though, as a master plan idea, safe streets for all idea, and maybe we see what the considerations are that come out of that process. Just a thought.
I think
Before
it's
we address
helpful,
this,
like we-
instead of having
Yeah.
these weird layers that aren't necessarily going to be integrated yet. That's all I'm thinking.
I think it's a good idea just to have the survey done, just to see what streets do require some maintenance or repair.
I-
One of my greatest things is
This does
that
not do that.
I see the kids walking on my street specifically, coming down and walking in the streets on Euclid, and then they cross over Plateau and Rock Hill, and they're walking on brand new sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Right.
But that's Rock Hill.
Yeah.
It's the same concept, is safety for the kids.
So let's stop a second here, because we're running out of time, and I think maybe, is there anyone besides David who wonders whether we should have a sidewalk policy
No,
at
I
all?
want this sidewalk policy. I'm just saying that I think we really should be talking about something else alongside this, which is complete streets or something else. Because just talking about this sidewalk policy is going to inundate our staff with
It is not.
requests.
I don't think it will.
I don't
I
think
think
it is.
I think you are overestimating the degree to which people will see this as a signal to come get a sidewalk. In part because, we have had consistent requests anyway. And to me, this helps us deal with the consistent requests. Complete Streets is how long are we before we really even are going to get to that? I think waiting until we finish the comprehensive plan and we finish any sort of complete streets plan, means that we're just in limbo with some of these requests that we have right now. Of course.
The walkability study,
Yes, ma'am.
will there be a way for residents to offer their own input in that study, like I need a sidewalk by my house, or my kid can't walk all the way, like, will we have a way to get information in from the residents who are, is that?
That's a fair question. Thank you. We haven't commissioned that, put out the RFP, let that process through. So I can't answer that in terms of what it will look like. My first response to that is I don't think so, because I think that's where the comprehensive plan feedback comes in. We're going to have all of that walkability information. The walkability study that was inserted into the SS4A was truly to have a consultant come look at our sidewalks to assess traffic volumes and that sort. So there's going to be plenty of public input, but I really think that's the comprehensive plan process. Again, we haven't started it, so perhaps there's some wiggle room within that, but I also want to defer to Vera. This is certainly her wheelhouse, and I hear her saying yes. So can you share a little bit about what a walkability study assesses?
Right, I think they go through the city and, pedestrian traffic and some of the criteria that I've listed here. Is there evidence of a worn path? Are there anything on record as far as incidents with, pedestrian injuries or bike injuries, gaps in the sidewalk, connectivity to make it cohesive, walkability from north to south, for our residents' children to keep them safe. It's part of the overall, thoughts with the SS4A grant FY23, and we're looking to do FY24, and hopefully in the future get some implementation funds for the city to be able to do some of these things to keep the streets safer.
No, I appreciate that. I can see a scenario where a consultant doesn't go on every street, right, and misses something that a resident might feel is important. So at some point, whether it's the walkability or the safe streets or the comprehensive plan, I think it would be good to have a way to assess how people think view their own.
Well, I agree. Remember that these assessments, the studies, walkability study, that information is then going back to the SS4A steering committee, that task force. It's not done in isolation or a vacuum. So that information will be there for residents who live here and are familiar to be able to add that additional input. One of the things that I'm concerned with as we talk about comprehensive plan, we're soon going to be talking about stormwater, all of that, which Vera will be sharing as well. We have a lot of resident input coming from a lot of different directions. And one of my things is trying to be the gatekeeper, is making sure that we're moving forward on those projects, because we truly have already collected a lot of resident input on these things. It's there, and we're not here to talk about stormwater yet today, but this is incredibly helpful. This actually is probably more direction than you guys realized. But the reason it is here in front of you today is because we have had several requests. I won't over exaggerate it. We haven't had a ton, but the requests are steady, and they have been coming in even before we wrote the SS4A grant. And, we really wanted to be able to give people an answer. So while it's not a ton of people, they are persistent. And so therefore, and saying no is an answer. It is a complete sentence. And so perhaps some of that is just, we're working on this, we're taking under advisement. It's going to be part of our bigger plan, and to put people on hold. And not that I want people to wait, but we do need to have connectivity to the discussion. And we certainly need to think about funding holistically rather than in small pieces. So
My only other question was, and I think the way that this reads, it already reads this way, but would this apply to both people who live on, like, I want a sidewalk on my street and I want a sidewalk on your street because I walk it? So if somebody's interested in putting on a sidewalk on a street that they don't live on, I'm assuming they're still responsible for collecting the signatures and doing all of that legwork. And I think the policy can be read that way, that it is their responsibility. But as you're fine tuning it, I didn't know if we wanted to call that out in any way.
I think that's a really good observation, and I certainly don't have the answer, but if memory serves me correct, that came up with the Traffic Advisory Commission discussions, because perhaps I don't want to discuss parking on my street because I work or I, do something over here. And so I want to be able to petition to have parking on that street. So I think that's a bridge we're going to have to cross. Who are we accepting petitions from?
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Well,
That is good.
maybe I am for kind of putting this on hold or pause briefly to get all the other moving parts together so that there is not
duplication of efforts or just starting from a clean sort of position.
What
I
are
think
the
it's-
other,
I
what
think
are,
it's
what are
healthy
the?
though to hear our comments and where we're thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not-
so I
not-
mean,
that's
it's
my
not that
comment.
put it
That's
on
my
hold. I
comment.
mean, yeah.
What-
that's-
I'm not saying I'm just saying that's my comment.
And I'm just, will you be more specific about the other moving parts? What are you?
Comprehensive plan, stormwater plan, you know, I mean, what if sidewalks go in and they're affected by the stormwater plan?
Yeah,
and we have
okay.
to be dug
I'm
up?
not, I'm not arguing with you.
So-
I just wanted to be clear that I
Right, well,
understood
so
what you're,
I'm
yeah.
expanding upon that
okay.
thought with giving examples, so.
We could also finalize the policy and just make it that we're not going to make any decisions until after we have the stormwater plan in place or something like that. We could accept.
That seems like a mixed message to me.
Just like, you could, if we wanted an answer to give to residents, we could say, here's a policy that we're working on. But you could say, we're not currently accepting applications, or we're not currently approving new sidewalks until that's done. It would be nice, I would think it would be nice for staff to be able, and us to be able to tell a resident something when they say they want a sidewalk.
Okay, clearly we are not ready to give you specific direction, although thank you very much for this. Welcome, by the way. This is how we initiate directives. Yeah.
It's all just for me.
I will say,
Yeah.
I thought it was really well written, and I thought it was clear, and I thought it was great, and thank you so much for the work on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you
It's
for
a
the
good
feedback. I
discussion.
do appreciate it. And I do agree with you. If somebody calls and tells me they want a sidewalk or they want their private street public, it's great to be able to give them an answer like, look, this is maybe why you can't have it. There's a grade change and I'm gonna have to build a 10-foot retaining wall. Some answers for the residents, I think is sort of important, but
So what was your intention? How long you wanted to keep this a draft?
that's why I came here tonight.
So you're looking for a policy from the council, a definitive decision, not necessarily tonight, but something.
Guidance from council is similar to the private street policy, private street policy to become public. There's levels and steps you have to go through.
Can I ask just a few questions about the maintenance? How-
Yes.
Do you know how many notices we've sent out in the past 6 months, 12 months in regards to deficient or unrepaired sidewalks?
From public works side, I've probably sent in the last year, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know if planning has sent out any.
How do you get notice that you need to send it out? Like what instigated or caused you to send those out?
Somebody calls me and says they got hurt at such and such address. I go out and do an investigation, take some photographs, send a courtesy infraction notification to that resident according to our ordinance, dangerous sidewalk ordinance, and send them a letter.
So we don't have someone like patrolling our sidewalks to determine safety.
Not
It's only
currently,
based off of a problem that arises.
yes, but I can hire somebody if you'd allow me to.
I'm just saying you add more sidewalks, you end up with more problems.
I think you're ready for your budget presentation.
Me?
You've got
Oh,
this.
okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, and we've given you probably way more than you wanted to think about, and I think we'll just have to figure out how to bring this back
Okay.
at some point and figure out timing along with the walkability study, the comprehensive plan, and so forth.
All right, thank you.
But thank you again for really putting together a good draft policy.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right. We're not stopping.
Okay.
We're just going to keep on going into our regular meeting unless there is a particular objection to that. All right, then I'm going to get out that agenda. And I will shorten this because at least in the room, I know that everyone knows the rules and I'm pretty sure everybody online does as well. But we're happy to have you at our regular meeting. If you'd like to make a public comment, if you're in the room, please fill out a public comment card. If you're on Zoom, we will give the opportunity to use the raise your hand function at that time. And then you can speak for 3 minutes then. All right, we will have the clerk call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander, Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
All right, next is remarks from the community and visitors. Is there anyone in the room? I do not think so. Don't have any cards. How about if anyone's online and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function.
Nothing.
All right, then we will move to new business, number 3. Does anyone have any new business for us this evening? All right, on to unfinished business. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, could you call for the third reading of Bill 9248, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of bill number 9248.
Third reading?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
An ordinance permitting the subdivision of certain property at 407 Fairview Avenue and 415 Fairview Avenue in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
All right, is there any discussion? We can have the vote, please.
Yes,
So-
Mayor. Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander. Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, Council Member Alexander, could you call for its approval, please?
Of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Right, we have made no appointments to boards and commissions this evening. We will have a brief closed session under number 3, please, Council Member Bliss.
Thank you. I would like to call for an executive closed session related to personnel, Missouri Statute 610.021, open parens, 3, close parens.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
All right, and this closed session is council only, so thank you actually for all being here.